Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and of course with me is Milly.
Hi.
And the special guest who will be interviewing today is Kevin Kutchaver. Thank you so much for joining.
No, thanks for having me, and it's a fun channel. I love watching the episodes.
Well, thank you so much. That definitely means a lot coming from you because we're here to discuss some absolutely amazing movies that hold a very special part in our hearts, but also going through the things that we've seen on IMDb about your career. And that's obviously expanded to a lot of things such as visual effects art and visual effects supervising. But before that point, what led you down that path?
Um, I, as a kid, would watch all of the Universal horror movies. And I loved all of the Frankenstein, Wolfman especially. Not so much Dracula. But then at some point I discovered Ray Harryhausen's work, the stop motion, Jason and the Argonauts, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. I mean, all of those, Clash of the Titans, all of those films. And that's what I really kind of marveled at, because at the time that was happening in the 60s, especially, there was no magazine, or there was nothing to tell you really how any of that was done. So it was really kind of it was a process to figure out, well, I want to do something. I do want to do something like this. So I just really became with visual effects really at that point. How is he doing this? How is this possible? What tricks is he using? And then as a young kid, Burt I. Gordon used to make these science fiction movies, Amazing Colossal Man, to The Beginning of the End with Giant Grasshoppers. Those movies were very low budget, and those you could kind of tell how they were done. So that was really a big thing, saying, oh, these buildings are just photographs and grasshoppers are climbing on photographs. That's I can do that. So, you know, that's when I was very early on. But what really happened was I went to see the movie 2001, and I just thought it was just like the most mind-bending, spectacular visual thing I'd ever seen. And that's probably the benchmark for saying, between that and the Harryhausen films, I want to get in this business somehow. Which was weird because there were no schools, there was no training for this kind of stuff. It was really not even a career, but I knew that I had a passion for it. It's something I really wanted to do.
Like you say, I think it's really impressive, especially like you say, the time that you got into that element of the industry, because like it wasn't something that has got as big as it is now. Like, now you barely make a move without it. But like you say, then it was in the early stages, you could sometimes see how things were done. So how exactly kind of did you go, at what point did you know that's definitely what you wanted to do? I know you said there was a few movies that really kind of solidified that for you. Was it that it led you to a certain genre or anything like that?
Well, the thing about me and my career in general is I'm considered a generalist. As a kid, I loved to draw. I loved to paint. I loved doing trick photography, like split shots with a little box brownie camera, where you had to roll the film back to shoot the second exposure. I'd like to get my hands on all of that stuff. I necessarily wasn't great in all of those, but I enjoyed doing all of those things. I mean, I still can't draw hands. I mean, I want to do a comic book character where, like, the handless man, where I don't even have to ever draw hands because they're really difficult. So, but yeah, I think that as I looked around, I looked at photography as being the thing that I thought that I would do first. And I did go to school for I won a contest in high school for a photo contest. And then I went to School of Visual Arts and I majored in photography in New York, and did all 4 years there and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and started to be an assistant for fashion photographers in New York. So it's a completely different thing. But on the side, I was always still making my own little silly movies and doing things. A friend of mine I grew up with named Peter Curran had a company called Visual Concept Engineering. He's the guy who I saw him kind of doing what I was doing, and he was a year older than I was, so he's doing some pretty fun stuff. Harryhausen fan, doing trick photography, drawing, and doing all this. So he and I became kind of best friends back in New Jersey, and ultimately he was like one of the youngest guys who was hired at a place called ILM to work on the very first Star Wars. So for years he kept trying to get me to come out to California and go to Cal Arts where he went, and then to work on some stuff. But I stuck it out in New York because I really wanted. I was learning a lot there, and I liked the technical process of the darkroom work and the film work and all of that. But I didn't want to get in the fashion business. It was really, really crazy, especially at the late 70s. It was the height of the Studio 54 days, and it was really, really just awful. I still can't stand listening to disco. It gives me the creeps. But he eventually said, hey, he just got the job to do lightsabers for Return of the Jedi. They jobbed that out from ILM to him. And did I want to come out and work on that? And I figured, well, they're never going to make another Star Wars movie. So I jumped at the chance, figuring a camera's a camera. So I came out and started to shoot miniatures and animation for him. And that was really the start of me kind of being legitimately in the visual effects business.
That's incredible to hear about all those experiences, and especially about the inspirations that you had watching all of the things that would convince you to go and do what you did. And that's one thing that's been an absolute pleasure to discover with this interview series, is not only everyone's stories about what inspired them, but also hearing people in the comment section talking about, thank you so much, this was really helpful because I'm looking to go into this, type of business. So what would your advice be to the people watching this that are looking into going into visual effects and visual effects supervision?
Well, you have to really, my dad gave me one piece of advice. He was a machinist, and he did aluminum molds and stuff for plastics and things, and he really did not like his job. And at one point he said, don't ever take a job that you don't like doing, because he says that's the thing that's like unforgivable. So I tell people to really just it's tough now because there's doing something that you love to do, and there's also the fact that you need to have money and you need to have a career. So it becomes a tough pull, but you should try to find whatever level it is that you still really enjoy doing. Because at a certain point, that might be all you get. I mean, look, we're in the middle of an actor and a writer strike right now, so the business is pretty dead. But I'm sure the writers are going home and writing their own work and spec for themselves. And everybody with all the tools available, everybody should be kind of doing the stuff that they love to do until the business part picks up. If they were like a typist or a secretary or something in an office, what are you going to do? Go home and practice typing? I mean, it's just not. There's no fun in that. So really find something you really, really love doing. You really have to. Everybody we ever hired, business-wise, I found people that were doing it because they wanted to do it, as opposed to I need a job.
That definitely makes quite a lot of sense, and it'd be good to convince people to follow suit with that and go into what they're passionate about, because there's so much that you've worked on that has no doubt probably played a part in what's inspired us to learn more about movies and shows. And just looking at IMDb, there's so many big names there that you've mentioned. Star Wars, I can also see some Ghostbusters and Addams Family. So what was working on all of these iconic movies like?
The best part about it was when we were working on them, they weren't iconic. I mean, they were just a fun project. As an example, I mean, even years later, a lot of these movies that I do years later, I'm surprised and happy that I was involved with them, like RoboCop. That movie still holds up because it was just such a great piece of filmmaking and satire about America, and unfortunately, nothing's changed here, so it still holds up. But at the time, I just liked. I knew that I was working on a quality project, and since film is a collaborative effort, it's nice to be able to work with a crew of people that that you have fun doing the work, and everybody's work is at their top level. So you feel like there's, everybody's work gets raised up when things click like that. I've been on shows where that hasn't happened, and it's just, well, that's when you just say, I just do the effects, I don't write them, and you just move on to the next thing. But you take away something from everything. Sometimes I learn what to do, and other times the lesson is what not to do. So.
Well, I know, like you were saying that, quite often you end up working with some fantastic people. And I know we've heard from a lot of people that, that's part of their favorite memories, is the things kind of off camera when they are interacting with people, or things that they have learned from people in the industry and that sort of thing. As JayBee
Right.
said, you've worked on some fantastic projects. Is there a certain memory that stands out to you from working on them that really, is prominent to your career?
Well, there are films that I'm proud that I've worked on, but they also do tend to coincide with the happy experience I had working on it. Hellboy is another example. I mean, working with Guillermo del Toro, I mean, he's just such a great fan and sweet guy that you want to try to do the best you can for him, and because of who he is, and he's such a great artist anyway. I mean, I believe that he kind of elevated the work we were doing by commenting and giving us notes on what to do, and trusting us to get some stuff done on a movie where he didn't really have a lot of money at that point, budget wise. It was really kind of tight. So that was a great experience, and it all comes down back to the crew, and the interactions with the crew, and the two Scooby movies were like that. I mean, they were really fun to work on, even though there was a couple of stressful moments just for us. Trying to make sure that we hit the expectations that we were supposed to do, but it was a really great experience.
See, I imagine, like you say, with Scooby being so well established, there perhaps was a layer of pressure there. And obviously you can probably tell from the background, we are definitely excited to be diving into that Scooby element. So how did your work on those two projects come about? Because like you said, you're involved with the first two live action movies.
Well, I worked on Ghostbusters 2 up at ILM. I did a brief stint up there working on it, and that's where I met Peter Crossman, who was the supervisor for the movies. And it's funny, his wife and my wife, Kathy Zielinski, both won a Focus Award at one point years ago, so they knew each other. Then I met Peter up at ILM, and this is just a clue as to how this business works. I mean, it really is. You tend to want to work with people that you get along with easily, because the work is hard enough. And you could have the most brilliant person on the planet, and if they are not amenable to really just kind of having a getting along and not causing any problems, I mean, I don't care how talented you are, you won't last long. So I met Peter up at ILM and whatnot, and I remember when the movie Monkey Bone came out, I really loved the visual effects in that movie and whatnot. So I called them up and I just said, hey, I really liked, no matter what happened with the film, I really love the effects work on Monkey Bone. It's really great. It's really creative and whatnot. And he then said, I might have something coming up. And it was him that brought me into the first Scooby movie. I had just wrapped up Flat Earth Productions, where we did like 6 years of the Hercules and Xena shows, and started a new company called Him and I Productions. So we were pretty fledgling. I think our first job there was Tremors 3. And then the Scooby Doo movie came along. So we were really looking to kind of try to show off as best as possible. So the timing on that was really nice. And through Peter, that's how I met Bill Bowes, and then also Ian Hunter from a New Deal, from the company that handled like a lot of the big scale miniatures and stuff. And those are not just connections; those are people we still see each other, and it's they're friends. Forget about what the movies are. They're people that I love working with, because they're very creative, and they kind of put wind in your sails when you have people around you basically coming up with ideas that aren't just about like an accounting sheet or I don't know. I don't want to get into where the business is now. Everyone will be depressed and cry.
Oh, no, I mean that's why it's so great to do these, because especially with the live action movies, one thing that I always marvel at, which I guess it kind of sounds sad to say that it's a marvel, but it is quite rare actually, that whenever we speak to anyone that worked on them, they always talk about other people that worked on the movie so fondly as well. So it's an absolute treasure to be able to go back to those times as well. So was it
Yeah.
primarily your familiarity with Peter Crosman that drew you to that project in terms of interest, or did you have any prior knowledge of the Scooby Doo franchise?
Well, the movie was kind of interesting. I just knew that the people involved were really going to kind of do something different. I mean, for one thing, I was a James Gunn fan, but at that point, it was just kind of like his trauma movies, which were really kind of bizarre, which is a good thing. So I knew that the project was kind of a big thing, and it was Warner Brothers and all of that, and it was a nice to me, it was a nice step to in a way. What we got was because we were a new company, we got kind of what I would call like spillover work. The reason we got the work in the first place was the Spooky Island stuff was originally going to be all miniatures, and then at some point with Ian Hunter's and his company handling that. But at a certain point, they realized that there probably would be the need for a lot of different setups for the miniatures, and a lot of it's going to be needed in too many scenes, budget-wise, to do that many camera setups and all of that stuff. So it was decided to basically just kind of go into digital and CG for that stuff. But Bill Bose was there with us as an art director, and Ian was there in terms of a master of lighting small objects and stuff. So those two guys basically really kind of helped us step up our visual effects process, where as I said, we were still kind of developing a pipeline and figuring out ways to do things because it was a new company. And having those two guys there, I mean, as I said, they really kind of elevated the work that we did. And the people that I brought onto the project were people that I'd worked with for years as well, and they all had very special. Each person had a special wheelhouse. A guy named Bill Arance was great with military, especially airplanes and stuff. So when we needed I remember if it's a 747 or 727, the Spooky Airlines plane. I called Bill and I said, "Look, we have to really make this nice." So that was his main task on the first movie, was to build that. So yeah, I brought in people that I had worked with for at least for all the way back to the Herc and Xena days. I mean, Bill has also been in the business for a long time. He was an airbrush artist on the original Tron movie. So a lot of the people I know are considered generalists now. They do they wear a lot of different hats, and they do a lot of things because we all started on low budget movies. I mean, movies did not used to cost $200 million. They used to cost almost $200. So you needed to have people that could do a lot of different things. Oh, I just kicked the camera. I'm fired. Yeah, they need to do a lot of different things. Some compositing, designing, building stuff in the computer, lighting. I mean, low budget movies or lower budget movies or modestly budget movies can't afford to have one person for every task, which is what seems to happen now. Everybody has a specialty, and I came up in an era where you had to figure out how to do things, and you needed to have a small crew. So, all the work that we did on movies when I ran Flat Earth for the Herc and Xena days. I mean, we worked on Blade. We worked on the second Mortal Kombat movie. I mean, these were things where we had a crew of maybe 12 people, and that's it. I don't know. I miss those days. I mean, the work being done today is phenomenal. It's crazy. I just watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3 again last night. It's just like my head explodes. It's like this stuff is just so beautiful, and the movie is really great. But there's something about seeing only 12 names on the screen as opposed to 2,000. So that's kind of what I feel bad about for people getting into business now. I was in there when I could point it at the screen and go, "That's my shot." That's something that I did pretty much myself, which you really can't do anymore, and it's kind of sad, but I'm glad that the genre work is and the effects work is permeated everything. So that's better for the business, and that means more people can kind of get involved and do this stuff and do what they like to do.
It must be quite a cool feeling to be able to identify the specific shots that you worked on, especially when it comes to projects that we've heard, people watching their work on the big screen for the first time, and the feeling of that, being able to identify what they worked on. And in terms of the first Scooby Doo movie, what were the shots or any sequences or set pieces that you worked on that you can point at and go, that you worked on that?
From the two Scooby films?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I was really happy with the Scooby Island that we did, especially since we got to design some of the rides ourselves. It was and as I said, we worked with Bill Bowes to flesh that stuff out. But they because it was now CG, we could come up with some other bizarre ideas that may have been like too much for having to build miniatures of everything. So in terms of our imagination and whatnot, it was really a nice collaborative thing with Ian and Peter and Bill to see how wacky we could make this work. Also back then, the very first shot was an aerial airplane POV coming into the island. And back then, tracking software was there were only a couple of options to basically track a camera, so you could match move the CG pieces into the plate. And some of that software was like $6,000, to buy, and we certainly didn't have that. So we were trying some other approaches, and that was a shot that actually, in terms of the comp, we almost got taken away from us because we were having a lot of tracking problems until I found a piece of software that helped us solve it. Because what you don't notice is when you're watching the island, you have a plane approaching, and there's movement from the plane, there's movement from everything, but the trees are also slightly moving, and that was the tough part. You don't really notice that when you are watching the photography. You're like, oh, these trees are all moving in different directions very slightly, and it's making everything look jittery. And so we have found a piece of software where we could actually steady the plate, so it looks like it's a still sitting in one spot, and that's the key to making it easy. So I promised that I would figure out how to solve that, because it really was something that we had to do and figure out, like I said, for a new company. So I'm really proud that we were able to kind of land that, and also to become confident enough where we were able to populate some of the rides and the backgrounds of some other shots. I mean, we didn't do a ton of work on the first Scooby movie, but we did the plane and all of the Spooky Island stuff, and then they added maybe another 13 shots where they wanted some pieces in the background. It was really fun. Once we got to the second movie, we did a lot of really fun stuff. I mean, the one that I think I love the most is the ghost ship that shows up, where to me that was kind of like an ILM Ghostbusters kind of moment. And I'm really happy with the way that those shots kind of turned out. I really was very, very happy with the look of those things. But all of the matte paintings. The other thing on the second movie that I really liked, we talked to Bill at one point. They had a scene where the gang is at Wickles, the bad guy's house. So we did the original matte painting thing for the house, and by matte painting, it's just all CG. They're all computer models. And they ring the doorbell, and a trap door opens, and they all fall. And then in the movie, in the cut, you see a big giant steel ball come to a stop, and they're trapped. And Bill said they ran out of production time to film the stuff in between. I don't know whether it was supposed to happen in Canada or where they were shooting. And they just ran out of time to do all of this other stuff in between, these other gags and things. And I suggested, well, they're going down, so they must be going into his basement. Said, have you ever seen the game Mousetrap? And I said, yeah. And I said, why don't we do something like that in his cellar, where there's some like weird contraption thing that takes him from point A to point B down below. So I did a proof of concept QuickTime just to say, here's kind of what I'm talking about. And Raja, the director, really thought I had a good premise. So he said, polish this up a little bit and show me what it'll look like. So we did, and excuse me. It's the one thing that I'm really like you said earlier, I'm happy about, because to be able to be taken as an artistic place as opposed to just a vendor and say, hey, how about this idea, and then like actually have it accepted, worked on, collaborated, and put into a movie. I mean, that little sequence I'm really, really thrilled with, because that certainly doesn't happen anymore.
So there's so many amazing moments from that movie. I think, like you've said, that one being one of them, as well as the ghost ship, seeing that kind of entering the real world was just mesmerizing watching that when I was younger. And I guess kind of going back to the first movie, kind of for a couple of minutes, do you remember if your work on the movie ever took you out on location to Australia? Were you kind of more involved in the editing once all that on location thing had finished?
No, at the first movie especially, I apologize for my throat. We were just getting kind of like I said, it was kind of an after the fact thing for us to get hired, because they were going to use miniatures for these things and whatnot. I don't know whether Ian had gone out to any of these locations or whatnot, but by the time it came to us, they were already cutting the film, and they kind of knew what they needed in terms of photography. See, live action works where a lot of times when you are just hired to do pickup work, like a small company or boutique company like mine is, a lot of times you end up with a locked cut, meaning they've shot, they've made a lot of editorial choices and whatnot, and they've pretty much zeroed in on what the actual cut of the movie is going to be. I'd say 90% of what I've ever worked on has been done that way. So that was the same thing with the first Scooby movie. Where no, I didn't. We weren't on location and whatnot. We had the people who are important to inform us about the look and the process and the tone of the movie. Like I said, we're Peter, Bill, and Ian, and some meetings with Raja just to understand what his take on it was. So, but no, I was very far removed from production, and we were completely in post production for that one. We were brought in more on the front end of the second movie, where we actually did temp some things out, some of the roller coaster work. I do not remember the name of the strange demon that was involved with the roller coaster sequence, but we temped all of that stuff out for the editors to just get the timing and get the action and whatnot. And then we handed that over to, I think it was Rhythm and Hues or Look Effects, somebody, to do the finals on those things. We handed all of our work and models over, but that's the other part of the second movie that I really like. Was I like, not just second movie, I like the temping process, a lot, because that's where you kind of develop, hey, this solves this idea. Just like the basement sequence. It's like, hey, how's this? Does this fit into the movie? Wouldn't this be fun to do? Keep the story moving, solve things that you weren't able to solve on set. You get to be a little more inventive when you temp the things out. Once you start doing the final work, you're just like moving the same pixels around for months. I mean, I remember on X-Men 2, we had little rocks coming down a broken dam face, and we were doing that for months. And they were paying us, but money's great. But man, if it's just like, could the frequency of the rocks, could they be maybe just a little higher? And I'm like, what does that mean? The frequency of it. You want more rocks, less rocks? You want them to be change the radio station? I don't know what you mean by frequency. So anyway, we like, and you look at it and you go, well, great, we did this damn face and a bunch of rocks for like 2.5 months. And I'd rather like do a lot of, you said, working on the smaller budget stuff. I'd like to put as much stuff into the movie as possible. I mean, I like that we were given the opportunity to, like I said, add a lot of ideas and production value to both of the Scooby movies. Even though they were planned, like I said, some of the design work, we tried to kind of up what we could put into the movie. That's my goal. And the sword fight was another fun one too. And a really great animator working with me, where we had never done anything like that. And they said, "Hey, how about these sword shots?" And we went, "Sure." So that was actually pretty fun to do, because that's a really kind of, that brought us back to the Ray Harryhausen stuff in a way, rather than fighting an army of skeletons. We just have to animate an invisible army, so the sword has to basically kind of hit all of the marks, still look like you can read it, and so it's not just this blur that shows up, but we had to match all of the hits and make sure that it still looked kind of nice. So that was really another fun sequence. There was an animator, John Ortman, who used to work with me, who just did a really great job on that. That's another sequence that I said, well, we got to really kind of do a lot of different and fun things on that picture. So I mean, both of the movies, like I said, I have a good fond memory of. I have a lot of movies I don't have a fond memory on, but we're going to skip those.
Well, I think, like you said, I think the good thing about these movies is certainly watching them back, you can distinctively see those bits that you worked on. And I guess a question that we have some interest on, and I appreciate, like you said, with the first movie, you kind of brought in once they already had their vision, but that movie famously had quite a few scenes removed. Do you remember if you ever worked on any of those or anything like that?
Yeah, I did work on some of those. I went to the friends and family screening where they showed them they showed the first version of the movie and announced no one will ever see this version again.
Oh.
And it was literally the funniest thing I had ever seen. It was great. It was great. And the problem was, and the studio choice made sense, but I have a feeling that the movie was made visually, the first cut of the movie, or the first, the director's version of the movie that we watched that time. Visually, it was made for kids, but the story-wise, it was made more for adults. Meaning, if you were a fan of Scooby as a kid, you would love the movie. If you thought Scooby was kind of silly and you wanted to basically take the piss out of it, well, that's the movie we saw. There was a really bizarre, like, as soon as Scrappy shows up, everybody my age just went, "Oh my God, I hate that dog." and the way the movie played him was like, "Oh yeah, he is. He's kind of a dick." So the kissing scene where they exchanged souls went on forever. It was just like, it was almost like the gun sequence in RoboCop where the guy gets shot. It had the same problem. When we were working on RoboCop, the movie kept getting an X rating because of violence. It was just too violent, and the MPAA kept trimming it, and went up. That board scene where Ed 209 shoots that guy used to go on for, you're watching and you're going, "Oh my God," and then it just keeps going on, and you're like, "How long is this going to go on?" And then it becomes funny because it doesn't stop. They trimmed it down to where it's just brutal. So this kissing scene in Scooby was kind of the same thing. You watched it and you went, "I'm getting a little uncomfortable. This is kind of weird." And it's like, what? And then it just became then you just started laughing because it just won't stop. But it was really, really funny. I had to do a little bit of a cleavage removal for some scenes where the sex slaves showed up and they were taken out of the script. So there were like little fixes like that we had to do. We didn't do a lot of that stuff because what we were doing was more like kind of establishing shots and whatnot. But there were a couple of things where they were remnants of the, and I would wish that I had some of that stuff, but I don't think that I do, unless it's in my private collection. But
I mean, I think
yeah,
it's safe to say that you've lived the dream. It's certainly our life dream to see that cut of the movie. So you've certainly achieved all our goals in life.
I don't know why they just don't say, you know, so much time has passed. Just put out a steel case version of both movies and put that version on a disc. I mean, I don't know. I'm not that business guy. I'm, you know, and it's Warner Brothers. I don't know. They're not in control of Discovery. Just both. Look, I just finished 9 years working on The Flash, the CW TV show, which was a great run. Once again, really nice people and whatnot. But I don't know. It's just turned into, the business has just turned into a little more of a factory for me than anything. So you know, which is kind of sad. The beginning of every, especially television that I work on, every TV show I work on, it's the first year is great because nobody really knows what they're doing. Everybody listens to ideas, everybody collaborates and whatnot. And I've worked on a lot of successful TV shows, and by the third year, there are so many people in between you and the people in charge now, because there's coordinators, there's VFX producers. A friend of mine in the business once said, you know, when I started in the business, the first person I used to talk to was the director and the producer. Now they're the last people I get to talk to, because the shows are successful, and then management kind of takes over and it builds in like kind of like black mold. And there's it's really hard to scrub out. How's that for a metaphor? So, yeah, but you know, the movies that I worked on, especially, I look on the things that I worked on recently, and I will look on the movies and things that I worked on. You know, I'm getting more and more interested saying, hey, 30 years ago you worked on this movie, and they weren't great films, but they were memorable. And I really feel that it's I just happened to get in the business during an era where the genre took over, horror. I mean, I love The Exorcist, horror and kind of fantasy and science fiction movies. Because of Star Wars, the VFX kind of, you know, took off in a big way. And it just, those were the movies that basically everybody saw when they were 12 years old. And I really feel that any movie, no matter how horrible it is, that you see when you're 12 years old, you are going to love for the rest of your life. I have my own set of those movies, but and that's the way it works. I mean, they just become endearing to people. I mean, so I'm still, you know, talking to people about movies I worked back in like '87. You know, I mean, and there's huge fan bases for these films that become either, even if they're not successful, they become cult films, and that's a really good feeling. Because sometimes when you're working on these little movies that aren't so great, you think, well, okay, that was okay. I had a good experience. But all of a sudden, 25 and 30 years ago, you have people basically saying, man, I love this movie. I saw this when I was a kid, and this really did. And like, that's really cool, because it helps validate, I think, the fact that you know, this part of the entertainment business is not curing cancer, but it's important because you know, people do get enjoyment out of this. It lasts. So that's really fulfilling.
That's very true. There definitely does seem to be quite a lot less character with things maybe nowadays. I mean, obviously it could also be you'll always remember the things that you watched when you were younger for nostalgia and like golden oldies type thing, but
Right.
it does seem a bit different now. But I guess without a doubt, with that time, for all some things have gotten worse, there's surely some things that have gotten better as well. So I think about maybe some of the way technology has changed over the years. If you had today's technology back when doing the first two Scooby Doo movies, do you think there's much that you do different, or some aspects that would have been easier to accomplish?
Well, one of the things that I think would have happened was we would never have gotten the job, because we were still a small company, and that's the way I prefer to. I might have done the work elsewhere, like I said, at ILM or at the time Boss Film or any of those places. But the way that the way that technology has advanced, and because everything becomes proprietary, and the fact that the studios themselves have become kind of monolithic, corporate, there was one time I was bidding on a show. I don't remember which show it was and whatnot, and they liked the work that we did, but they said, we can't give you the work because if something goes wrong, your company's not big enough to sue. And I went, well, that's an interesting choice. In other words, there was no protection for them if something happened. That's why all of these things are going to these big giant, mostly these bigger giant companies. But recently, because of the way that it's going in budgets and whatnot, you're starting to see the cycle of spillover into more smaller shops again. Maybe not as small as we had, of like 12 to 20 people, but this cycle does kind of go up and down because the technology that was available 6 months ago then eventually becomes available for everybody. I mean, that's just for the longest time in CG, it's just like nobody can do hair. We can't do fur. Nobody can do hair. There was no way to do it. You had to basically write your own stuff and this and that. And eventually, off-the-shelf things became available where some people could. I mean, it may not have been the most great-looking stuff, but it was possible. Same with morphing. As soon as Willow came out, everybody's just like, we have to have morphs in our movie. We need a morph. I'm like, well, great. I don't know how we're going to do it, but by the time, very quickly, a year passed, there's a program called Morph for like $99 that you could do rudimentary morphs and things. So technology is an interesting thing to chase, and it's not the thing that should be chased. You end up with people seeing Lord of the Rings and they said, I have $10,000, I want Gollum. So it's a blessing and a curse, but I don't know. Certainly there'd be things that we would do. Software has basically advanced to where even the software that I use has made it easier to see results and faster to see results. And I think that's one of the big things. I mean, look at what Unreal Engine is doing now. I mean, the fact that a lot of renders that we had to do were taking maybe an hour to 2 hours a frame to render, on our small render farm. That's gone now. So you basically get to make improvements faster. I mean, that's to me the huge thing that an individual artist. The other change about the technology though is because of this, you don't need to be in a big place anymore. I mean, I'm hoping that this stuff basically gets the very first form of independent filmmaking, I believe, is you're in history class, you're bored, and you start drawing stick figures on every page of your book, and you make a flip book of like something stupid happening with your drawings. That's independent filmmaking. Now with the fact that you can shoot stuff on your iPhone, editing programs are advanced. I mean, everything's available. I'm hoping that people, rather than just always just jumping into, I need a career at a big giant place, I hope that they still continue to make their own stuff on their own, because if all of this were available when I was a kid, I can't imagine what I would have produced and accomplished. I wouldn't have little clay dinosaurs melting under hot lights. Let's put it that way.
That's
So,
incredible. And
yeah.
so for the second movie now, you were credited as a visual effects supervisor. How did your work either doing that movie or going into that movie compare with the first one?
Well, there's a it didn't really, to be honest, it didn't really change. It was just kind of a step up, just in terms of the fact that they let me kind of steer my shop a little more. God, I wonder if I should tell this story. There's a great story about getting credit that people don't understand in movies. And I don't remember whether it was on the first one or the second one. It might have been the second movie, actually. I don't remember if I think in the first movie I have an effects supervisor, but on the second one I think I don't actually have my name there. Am I misremembering this, or? I don't.
In the first one, it's credited as I think CGI matte paint, and the second
Right.
one is a visual effects supervisor.
I remember at the time. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was the first movie. That's where I had the credit problem. I had, like I said, a small handful of people working on the movie with me and whatnot, and Warner Brothers said, you can have your company name, your name, and 2 credits. And I said, oh, but I have like another guy that really did a lot of work on this. Can I get a credit for him? So 3 credits. They said, no, based on the budget they were giving you, that's the amount of names you get. So I said, well, I'm still bidding on like 10 more shots. How much does a name cost? And they said, it doesn't work that way. And I said, you just said it did, based on the budget. So how much should I budget these for so I can get another name? And they said, that's really funny. And then they pretty much just like hung up. So I was supposed to get, then I got a call basically, and they said, we're looking over the credits and whatnot, and your name is missing. And I said, I gave my name to one of my other guys who really should have gotten the credit. And their legal team responded with, oh, aren't you nice? And then they hung up. So credits at that time period were like, it was weird. They held it like it was like some amazing thing that they had to control constantly. And maybe they did, because the more credits they put on film, the more prints you had to make, and it ended up costing money. But once digital projection took over, there's no excuse for not giving people credits. And we see that now. Everybody gets, a huge amounts of credits and whatnot. But arguing for credits back then was really there's a lot of movies I worked on where I just came in a little late, and the credits were done, and I have no credit on them. Excuse me, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Big Trouble in Little China. These are movies that I really would have loved to have a credit on, but the process back then was, like I said, it was just like they held onto it really tight. Like this is what we give you, and this is what you take. Excuse me. The speaking of Warner Brothers, the not Looney Tunes, the Gremlins 2 movie. At a certain point, they said, we're only going to give company credits. Beyond a certain point, only companies are going to get credit. And I told the guy who was the supervisor for effects, I said, do they know that I'm still working on the movie? I'm still animating electricity for the end death sequence on paper. And Office Depot is having a sale on shredding machines. So go see what you can do. And ultimately, he and I had our credits added right around the time that Daffy Duck says, ridiculous, isn't it? And points to our names. So that was a victory. So,
No,
like
it's
I
that.
said,
And it only is fair that so many names are mentioned, and in a way I kind of appreciate the way Marvel do things, in that they give that kind of post-credit scene so people do stay and see the credits and appreciate the work that everybody
absolutely.
has done. I think that's a really good way of everybody getting the acknowledgement that they deserve. And I guess my next question is, heading into the second movie, how did
Yes.
things differ for you? Because I know you said you were involved, a lot earlier this time.
Well, as I said earlier, the biggest thing was just the fact that we were able to we were given a little more creative freedom to do things. There's the bar scene where they walked out into, I remember the name of the bar, but it's like a lighthouse with a bridge. We did that as a matte painting, all in the computer, but all they said was it's got to be a lighthouse and a bridge, and they had the very bottom peak of the building. That was the set from there down, and we basically just had to do whatever we wanted to. And we did a little back and forth, but we were able to just kind of come up with our own ideas for what this might look like. It's like, well, let's have a bridge. Well, let's make it like this. Let's put the moon back there. Let's put the cloud. I have a lot of photographic elements that I use as well. So, I gave them a choice of clouds. It was really a nice collaborative thing, as opposed to we have this all blocked out. We just need hands to put this together. So the second movie really was a creative, much more creative process on all of those shots. We worked a long time on Wickles' house, that exterior shot where I said, wouldn't it be cool if bats flew out? I mean, it was just, and he went, that's great. It was really like a nice, nobody's ego got in the way. Nobody just said, I didn't say bats, get them. It was a nice process to do. That was back when it was just all like, the shot works. Is there anything we can do to make it better? And that's a creative process that I like, as opposed to now, which is what's wrong with the shot? Let's find a mistake. Let's find a problem. I'd rather basically go through the process where you cut something in, and then as time permits, you do as much improvement as you can. As opposed to banging pixels with a hammer and chewing up the rest of your schedule. I mean, I like doing effects work the way that animation works, which is basically you have storyboards. You fill them in with improvements of rough pencil tests, and then you improve it with color, clean up, and then with color, and that's what I'm used to doing. And that's the way I deal with all the kind of, like I said, the modest budget films and whatnot. But you get in the bigger budget ones that they just sit there and they scrutinize, they get a microscope out, and it looks like these 3 pixels look like I think I'm seeing something. It's like, you keep commenting on my shot, you're gonna see something. You're gonna see stars, buddy. So.
I mean, I think it's kind of universally agreed that when people have taken a step back and just let the creative crew create, work on Scooby, the projects are so much better. And I think, like you say, in the addition of the bats, it kind of made it more reminiscent of like the opening titles that we all used to love from Scooby and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
all that sort of stuff does work, and it adds that heart to it a lot more than that kind of, like plain corporate instructive kind of feel to things. And I kind of wanted to ask also, I know you were saying about some of the scenes that you did work on, like you say, Wickles Manor, that incredible ghost ship. In regards to that, were there any, and there were so many villains in the movie, was there any of those that you worked on at all?
No, the only one was really that was all really kind of done. We didn't do a lot of character animation at that point, because that usually needed a bigger software set and more people involved. The only thing that we did in terms of, like I said, the demon, we built the roller coaster stuff, and those models, and then like temped out the demons for that, with him getting hit and flying off. Gosh, I'm trying to even remember how many shots that might have been, but yeah, we did temp work on it. They were happy enough with it. We came up with the model and rigged it, and just kind of did enough work to kind of make sure that the timing and the cut would work for the editors, and then it was just handed over to somebody else to kind of take our stuff and kind of move it into polished lighting and rendering and animation. I was actually a little afraid when they said, "Oh, send over the animation for the guy too," and I was like, "Aren't you going to do this over again?" But they use it as a starting point, just like mocap. You do motion capture. It's a starting point when animators always go in and basically plus that stuff. So those are the only real kind of organic creatures we did. The only other thing that was tough was on the ghost ship was you had the and I do not remember the villain's name, unfortunately. The kind of steel mask pirate guy. I don't remember his name. He's on the boat and he's hanging on to ropes on the boat, and like a lot of times we had to take out the ropes that were practical and put in our own ropes and track into his hand, because the 3D ship is already built and it's moving in space and rotating, and his hand may be here and it may actually drift away from the original rope. No, he's always got the original rope. It may drift away from the 3D one. It may start off lined up and then it may drift out. So we would paint this out and then actually animate the ropes back in, which was kind of actually a little difficult to track all of that stuff. But that's part of that process where you put the shot together. We tried to make it look like it had a nice visual look. Especially that shot where it turns the corner. It's just really, I really am really proud of the guys for that shot. Like you said, Bill Arance, Lance Armstrong guy kind of worked for me, and John Gibbons kind of worked all on that sequence. So there were really three guys that were kind of putting that together, and then they give me the pieces and I comp them. So very, very efficient,
Yeah,
very economical.
yeah.
That was at the point. That was at the point where I said, "Listen, if you cut one of the dog shots, we can do like another 6 shots for you," because that was our price difference. The Scooby shots are really, really complicated, but if they do a cut, then I said, "There's any other stuff you want in the movie? I mean, you can swing it over." And I don't know. That's back when things were a little more pliable. People were like, that happened on Hellboy too. It's like, we're having a problem with this shot. Can we swap this with the other company? And we'll take that shot they're having a problem with. And that's a collaborative process. I mean, that's the kind of work that I will probably now, as I've been doing this, like I said, for 40 years, too long. I've been doing this for too long. I'm probably only going to work on things that really kind of excite me now. I mean, people where the crew I know are very collaborative and very creative, and I can learn something. I'm at the point where I just don't really feel that I just want to work just to work. I have my own silly movies I want to make as well. I want to make my own silly monster movies. So,
I mean, the shot of the ghost ship is absolutely amazing, especially seeing like the scope of it and the size of it, especially amongst the cars as well. You can really quantify how big it is compared to everything around it. It's absolutely fantastic, and I think there's a few bits of concept art that we've seen from that as well. So speaking about familiarity and stuff like that, when we did speak to Peter Crosman, he showed us quite a lot of things that, for all we always associate the first movie with deleted scenes and stuff, but there was quite a bit cut out of the second one as well in terms of concepts and stuff like that. Is there anything that was cut out of the second movie that you're aware of or worked on that you kind of wish was put back in there?
I wish there were sex slaves, because I missed them from the first one. I could have used those again. No, I think the movie was at that point. I think, and this is just conjecture on my part. I think they were happy with the results from the first film, and they just kind of let Raja kind of do what he needed to do to put the second one together. The script was not so heavily retooled. I just think the studio was probably a little more comfortable with, listen, this is a family picture, because Scooby Doo, we can make more money doing this as opposed to that kind of like break the fourth wall meta thing that we saw at the cast and crew screening. So I think everything was planned out a little better, because I'm pretty sure the studio was probably more involved, and we're keeping an eye on it, especially with what happened last time. So that's my complete guess, but I can't think of anything that was cut out other than. Let's see. Just going through. No, I mean, I think it was an additive process as opposed to a cutout. Like I said, rather than saying, well, we can't do this or we're not going to do that, it was more of the how can we make this better and what can we do to plus this thing. But I think they had a pretty good roadmap in terms of what they wanted for the second movie. So I don't think a lot was lost, at least to my knowledge.
What were some of your favorite memories from working on the Scooby Doo movies?
When we were doing that Wickle Cellar thing, and I pitched that idea, Bill Bose came over with all of his art direction notes and drawings and things of what they were hoping they were going to be able to shoot. And that was really the best. That was really the greatest thing, to basically have his work there and kind of to help inform what we could build and what we had to make, to try to fulfill that broken dream of, he spent all of this time on. So it was just really great to, just also to just go through his book of drawings and designs and stuff. It was just such really great stuff. I think Bill does really, really great work. And that was one of the most, I think, exciting things, just because we don't usually get to do that. I mean, usually it's like here's the artist rendition, just to match this, and because we're a small company. But the fact that we got to kind of pour through all of this stuff and kind of pick and choose, and like, Bill, what do you think of this? And going back and forth with him and Peter and Ian, but mostly Bill's drawings. It's just like that was really I don't know. I think that was really, I think everybody working with me thought that was really such a great thing to do, because it's so rare. It's so rare to have that kind of pre-production aspect that we in post very rarely get.
See, I think it's really difficult to not appreciate Bill's work. I mean, I remember when we were interviewing him, he was showing us some of the things that he'd created, kind of like actual physical kind of like statues and things and like outlines of buildings. And he tipped it upside down and it was a FedEx box. And I remember us all just being completely astounded that
Yeah.
he'd had a mail delivery that day and went, that's what I'm going to do. Instead of putting that box in the bin, this is what I can do. It was honestly exceptional.
That's the old school thought of how are we going to do this, or what's available. You know, some of that is what we also learned on like Herc and Xena, even though we were delving into the computer stuff, and we were like desktoping creature animation really. You know, you start to look, you have this passion for doing the work, and if you don't have the resources that a giant company has, or people with a lot of money have or whatnot, you create around what you have to basically make something great out of it. I remember, I mean, I worked on the first season and almost full second season of Babylon 5. I took all of the animation, effects animation stuff out of the edit bays where there's like run like a taxi cab. And I said, we can desktop this stuff now, because the very first copy of After Effects came out. And I used to basically animate my effects animation on paper, scan it in a frame at a time, and then composite it in After Effects on what started off as one computer and ultimately ended up with 8 computers around me at home, which wasn't really being done back then. But part of it is, I know the process because I dealt with it in the analog film days. So I know what has to happen. How can I basically take what's available and still end up with the same result? You know, I mean, I worked on Return of the Jedi at the same time I worked on the movie Dreamscape. 2 completely different things, but I realized the work that I do at my level is very similar. So what's the difference? You know, and how do I take what I learned from the big movies and move it into the smaller things? So you know, the fact is that you know, you have this will to basically make the work happen and whatnot. So when you look at it and you're creative, you look at Bill takes out a box and goes, oh, I was going to have to basically find pieces of cardboard and make one, but it's done. I'm ahead of the game because I know what it's going to look like when it's finished. That's the other thing. There's a picture of it in your head as to where you want it to go. So yeah, a box. And I mean, I've seen there's some guys they named the Skotek brothers who do a lot of science fiction work and great work and whatnot. They've made spaceships out of like pieces of PVC and like some old like, you know, tube containers they've made. They build these great sets basically, light them and then paint them. And when you see them in person, you're just kind of like, oh, it's a trick. It's a photographic trick. So that's the stuff I appreciate, you know, even more than we just spent $8,000 on this piece of software that's going to, you know, you do this and you have to type in code and I don't want that. I want people to basically like work with their hands, and still I miss, you know, coming up with something where you go, holy crap, like you're a genius. I want those. I want those moments like that, you know. So that's Bill in the box.
Well, that's certainly something that we appreciated about everybody that worked on Scooby. Like you say, that certainly came through, and we wished we'd seen a third movie, and it was rumored that there was going to be one that was cancelled. Is that something you ever heard about during your work on the second movie, or was it something you were approached about?
No, I've never approached about it, but I think I had heard some whisperings about it and whatnot, and you know, but I don't. You know, the variety and all of those things get a lot of these blurbs just to kind of keep people's names in too. So they may have had a plan. Somebody may have said, "Hey, let's do another one," and then it became a news item. But I don't think there was any ever really deep work on it. They might have a script someplace. I don't know. So no, I was not approached, and like I said, I had moved on to greener pastures. I don't know. Would I do a third one? I did the third RoboCop, and look what happened to that.
Well, I certainly think
they turned Robo into a Macy's parade. So,
well, I certainly think that if there was a third one, there's certainly still a huge audience out there that would love to see it, perhaps hoping for something closer to what the first movie was meant to be, but who knows?
Yeah.
And I guess kind of with that look into the future, is there anything that you're working on at the minute that you can share with us at all or tell us about?
A lot of what I've been doing, well, as I said, the last 9 years I've worked on Flash, and the reason I worked on Flash and through a recommendation from Peter Crossman. So, stay connected with people. I was running my company that we did, like I said, we did the movie Shoot 'Em Up, and we did Hellboy, and we did some other movies. Him and I Productions was my small company. I got to the point where I couldn't really fight the tax breaks anymore. If people take a movie to New Zealand as an example, they get roughly 30 cents back on the dollar to use. It's a tax. They get a tax break, or a payoff, as I call it. But my small company, I'm budgeting close to the bone as it is, and it got to the point where I couldn't bring enough crew on to help do stuff. So I started doing more and more stuff myself, since I was capable of doing a lot of different things. But I said, I'm working around the clock now. I'm killing myself. I could be working at a grocery store and make the same hourly amount that I'm now making, because I'm killing myself and whatnot. And I said, I have to solve this. And I talked to Peter about this, and I said, there's got to be streaming is starting to happen or whatnot. Why would they go to a vendor to do the effects work and still try to figure out what they want? Because TV has to happen very fast. So why would they basically have the vendor temp stuff out, then get notes on it, and then charge for redoing temps and stuff? There's got to be a process where we bring in some in-house people, which is what's really happening now. So I became the in-house guy for Flash, where I would just rough stuff out for the editors and whatnot to get the cut finished so they could do the timing. I mean, when I started on the pilot, and maybe the first episode, the editors were like going to the internet and like getting cutouts of Flash from the comics, and just kind of doing like cardboard cutouts. He runs to the left, he runs to the right, he runs up, and it was kind of like, it was beyond cheesy. And I said, if you bring me on, I think I can bring everything up to at least to like Roger Corman level, of effects. Bringing in some 3D, having a real 3D person and tracking, and we really tried to amp up, so that way when they send it to this network, the network has a clear idea as to what this might look like when it's finished. The same kind of temping we did on Scooby and whatnot. And I did that for 9 years. And the main reason that I've kind of stayed in that world is because the work has to happen fast. It's steady. I mean, that show went on for 9 years. It's kind of incredible. And it's in town, because I really don't like to travel. And everything that's being shot now, because of the tax breaks, it's all in another country. It's like, well, spend 6 months here, spend 6 months in England, or you have to go to Australia. And like, I'm more comfortable basically just kind of doing my thing. So I don't really do any more on-set supervising, because you have to kind of, I mean, it's a long flight to Australia. It's crazy. They should move Australia closer.
It would be ideal.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where I ended up where I am now. So if I'm looking for something, we just did some work. I can't really say what we did, but we just did some work on the TV show Evil for Paramount, which is a kind of a horror. It's like X-Files with the Catholic Church and exorcism. So I had really fun doing that and working with another guy that I met decades ago, and we had a good time doing that. And so if that show continues, I might think about continuing on that show, because once again, we got to have input in terms of making stuff happen and improving what was capable on set, and trying to solve problems. Is I want to end up working with people and not for people. I'm at that point where I can kind of turn some things down if I just don't think it's going to be an advantageous, fun experience. So
Well, it's good
it's
to
a
know
good
that
point.
the things that you'll be working on are going to be things that you have a belief in and think will be good, and that's really exciting to hear, even from a perspective from us, following you and your work. I think that's very exciting. And for people watching, where's the best place to keep up with that work?
I have a since I've got some time now, I have a website. I have a partner and a website, and a company called sheerforceofwill.com. We are developing scripts. We're trying to get some animation shows off the ground, and we're just trying to do our own thing. So as we continue to work and mostly do our own short films, there's a couple of things that are up there now, but now that we're at the point where we have a monumental strike going on, work is slowed down and everything, we want to take advantage of that and try to finish these. I have all these little scripts of these fun little short movies and ideas we want to do. So we're really putting a group of people together to try to finally accomplish these things. And you find that everybody who becomes the cranky old age that I am, that everybody starts like, I'm going to go paint landscapes, and everybody starts doing their own thing finally, because it's like what we've been waiting for. I did not get in the business to paint wires off of stunt guys' asses, but we did a lot of that. But now it's time for me to, put some films together and have somebody else paint those asses.
Well, that's incredible. I'll leave all of those links in the description down below, and just look forward to the future. But that does conclude the questions that we had for you today. Just thank you so much for coming on and being so generous with your time and your answers, because we've definitely learned a lot about your career, and that's amazing.
Well, I hope it all kind of was not just a meandering mess, and I hope it made sense. And the main thing is, like I said, you've got all the people out there. You've got all this technology and stuff. I mean, content is important. Make your own. While you're making money, spend some time to make your own stuff. Be creative, whatever it is. Drawing, comic book. Make your own comic book. Do your own paintings. Make a film. I mean, it's all available. And with Blender, I mean, learn that thing. It's free, and you can do amazing stuff. But I just really want to kind of promote that attitude, because it seems like it's like a raging river, and you got to jump in at some point. It seems like it's overwhelming. There's too much to learn, but pick the thing you like to do and concentrate on that. I like to draw. I like to light. I'll, do lighting and photography. Well, go into the computer and learn all of the lighting parts of that, and then learn the animation, and learn. There's so many possibilities now that there's no excuse to not go out and actually start making independent films and independent art. That's what we all wanted to do when we were 8 years old. So we should get on it.
That definitely is an excellent message to end things off on. I'm excited to hear people's updates in the comment sections about if they did embark on that movie making process, because that's really exciting. And like I said before, I'll leave all the links in the description down below. And for everyone watching this, thank you so much for watching. If you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.